Hello again, everyone. Melth here with more Advanced Wars by Web Global League content. This time I'm playing a match on Chosin Reservoir, which is actually the first map that I ever saw on Advanced Wars by Web's site, and I'm quite excited to have a chance to play on it. I think it's both aesthetically a very pleasing map and strategically quite an interesting one. Now, like all maps by this designer, there's a useless lab in the very middle of the map. Also, like all maps by this designer, it's named for a famous historical battle. Chosin Reservoir was a great military disaster for the US/UN forces in the Korean War that basically had them kicked out of the north half of the country. Hence, there's now a North Korea. In any case, the middle of the map is fairly useless. Besides the lab doing nothing, there's just not that many properties around that to fight over. The ones you can theoretically try to take from the opponent are so close to their airports that you can't get them unless the opponent has already lost the game. Also, there's not really much you can observe there if you get a recon there, because people don't tend to really front shift through the middle very much in this map from my observations. The map is just so big that you really don't want to take units from like over here, say, and then have them run multiple turns, like 5 turns to get over to here and fight there. That's just not really efficient most of the time. So when one is front shifting this map, it tends to be less by actually moving many troops around. You might do some that happen to be near this fringe or something anyway, but more just by where you shift your reinforcement lines to, and where you focus more of your reinforcements. You're going either westward as purple or southward, basically. I've never seen any good player just totally abandon one side or the other either. They always have vehicles on both. It's a question of whether you concentrate more on one side or the other. Note that the airport and the middle base can both reinforce either the western direction or the southern direction almost equally well. You do have a slight advantage, I would say, going southward as the purple player or northward as the orange star player. But you can make a credible push in either direction, just to decide where to focus your forces at any given time. The airport is quite far forward, so coppers are very strong in this map because they can reinforce super fast, and of course, they're forced in the way of the bases too, further slowing them down, but it doesn't matter to air units. Speaking of air units, you see there are 3 island cities, one's a port, but 3 island properties per side of the map, which means that a T-copter is basically mandatory here. And in fact, you want to get one that's probably one of your first vehicles, maybe even the first one, because every time you delay your T-copter, you're losing 3,000 vague Advanced Wars money, whatever G stands for. Dollars. You're losing 3,000 dollars every time to delay your T-copter by delaying this property and that property and that property. You don't want that. Now, you might make an argument for delaying the T-copter a little bit to get at something even more important first. There can be some validity to that. But on this map, what we want to get first. A recon's not really a good idea as a first vehicle. Not as like a turn 3 one anyway. Because the map is so humongous, and so easy for the enemy to reinforce with like a tank from their base, that I have never once seen a successful recon harass on day 3 by a high-level player. It just doesn't work. They always have a tank in place easily before you get there. You accomplish nothing. And you're not going to scout anything useful either, really. Just, cruising over to here and just seeing, oh, yeah, they're capturing properties, same as they always do. So that's not really very useful. You could get, like, a tank out just to defend yourself, but you don't really have to rush that, because there's plenty of time before the recons can get to you anyway. So, T-copter first is a pretty good choice, I would say, all in all. Now, my opponent this time is quite a formidable one. He's mid-1200s last time I checked, he's beaten several 1300 players, and is rapidly rising. So I was thinking that he'd definitely be a real challenge, and he was. Probably the toughest I've faced since Starduster. Besides just being strong across the board, just the basic fundamentals and whatnot, he is a very creative player. He does different things and does not really follow the tried and true standard strategies for each map that I've seen him play on, so that's dangerous. It's kind of like me, in fact, I would say. Furthermore, he doesn't really follow a predictable pattern of always building a certain opener. Some people always do an early recon, some people always do a tank chain. Not so for this guy. He likes T-copters a lot from what I've observed, but doesn't always use them by any means. So, you can't necessarily count on him either harassing you and therefore being weak to a tank counter, or getting greedy with T-copters and therefore being weak to a recon harass. He's just unpredictable. And in the late game too, he doesn't really always build heavy tanks or copters or planes or whatever. He just mixes things up based on the situation. So, the most dangerous kind of player that there is, I would say. Unpredictable. Now, on this map in Tier 1, Hawk is pretty much the only worthwhile pick. Sasha gets slaughtered by Hawk. The amount of money on the map is so huge that global damage TOs seem to dominate. But I actually thought I could see a way to make Von Bolt work pretty well here. And sure enough, when I drilled into the win rate statistics and filtered down just high-level players, Von Bolt actually gets a really good win rate here, even against Hawk. Because I think the map kind of has two more or less separate small battles going on, rather than just one humongous one. And it's not really easy for Hawk to stall out the game until he can get super good black storms. There's a lot of terrain for Von Bolt to fight over, a lot of contestable properties for him to steal and so forth, so Von Bolt has a game plan against Hawk. He can get enough income advantage to actually win the game potentially. That's one reason that I picked him. I also just wanted to do something unusual. And I also thought that, some of my clever ideas for this map that I want to try out are sort of greedy. And I can have good cover for those greedy strategies if I play as a tough CO who nobody wants to actually fight in the early game anyway. If I play as Von Bolt and opponent this Hawk, he'll be trying to win the long game. He won't really be trying to rush and harass me, so I can get away with some greedy stuff. So for those reasons, I picked Von Bolt. Alright, let's get into it. So, kind of a fake out here if he's going for the airport. Banjo, as I mentioned, is very creative. On one run of this map, he actually did go for the airport first, and that worked pretty well. He had a clever idea in mind for that, which was similar to one I'd been thinking about. But when I saw that he'd already done that, I kind of abandoned that plan because I thought it's not going to work on him because it relies on the surprise. In any case, in this case it was a fake out. It's fog, so I can't see it anyway, but he's going for the base. I think we both do a similar approach initially of, one person goes for the base, one person goes toward the side to capture all those valuable properties, one person then goes for the airport after that. Neither of us going for an early recon because that would be terrible. Here, I think he makes a slight misplay. This infantry should either be here, where it can capture that property immediately, or here to capture that one immediately. Over here, it kind of just delays himself by about $1,000 for nothing, basically, by slowing down a capture, so not perfect there. Won't make a big difference, but a slight imperfection that can add up. Alright, so get started on my own airport here, and still just saving money up. And here he gets quite creative again. An early artillery. Now artillery, I would say, are very, very strong on this map, relatively speaking for Fog of War maps anyway. Because the terrain is about as favorable to them as it can be without just being covered in mountains and pipe seams. See, you notice that for a big swath of the map, there's kind of this grid of forests and cities, spaced apart in a way that's really nice for artillery. For example, an artillery station here can lock down that city, or that comm tower saying hidden and safe. Maybe the battle shifts though. Well, you can maybe move it 1, 2, 3, 5, perfectly moving it from forest to forest. Now you're locking down the comm tower in this city. Or maybe he's in retreat, maybe he gets knocked back to here. Well, I can stand on this forest and lock down that city, and that city, and that city, and so on. There are just so many perfect artillery positions, and artillery can go into any of these forests and do a really great job of locking down multiple properties while staying safe, and shift around freely too. There could not really be better terrain on a typical Fog of War map than this. Furthermore, this is very smart timing, because everyone, with every capture order, with no exceptions I've ever seen, starts capturing their comm towers in this map on turn 9 and finishes on turn 10. Well, he will arrive in one of these forces with this artillery on his turn 9. Then I'll start capturing on my turn 9, then I can actually interrupt that capture. It's almost the only safe way to do that, because trying to harass that with a recon will just get you annihilated by a tank, guaranteed pretty much. But an artillery can get that shot somewhat safely, by not having to come out into the open, and by possibly having tank backup by the time it's ready to shoot. So, that at least is worth considering. If it can do that and delay that comm tower for me, then we'll kind of be in the same boat, where he can't 2-hit kill me on cities because I have good defense, and I can't 2-hit kill him on cities because I'm going to be short on offense for a little bit. It won't hold forever, but it will blunt my early game aggression, and that's all he needs, because he will win the long game if I don't have a good early game advantage. So, smart move there, creative and unexpected. But I was expecting some kind of greedy type opener from him, either T-Coppers or something like this, so I do build a recon this turn. Now, I mentioned that I think a day 3 or day 4 recon is a terrible mistake on this map. Besides just the high face value cost of the recon, you must always remember, with an early recon, you're throwing away money on captures that you could have gotten too. Anything that your day 3 infantry could have captured but won't because you didn't build them until day 4 is basically 1,000 money lost because you built that recon. And there's no way to make up for that with just harassing damage on a map like this. Not even possible. So, a day 5 recon though is a bit less costly, because now I've already had time to get about 4 infantry over here. They'll capture most things that this day 5 infantry I could have hypothetically built there could have captured. So not really losing much money over there. Meanwhile, I mentioned that most properties here are not really easy to harass in the early game because it's too easy to have a tank out to defend them. Well, one exception actually would be this port. See, people usually send their initial tank to the top side or the bottom side to deal with the most obvious recon harassment, going down these roads and shoals and whatnot. But this port here, it looks like they have a tank near for several reasons. Both because, as I mentioned, they tend to send it north instead, and also because the forest here blocks easy tank reinforcements, and so does this sea over here, really. Most people want to have their tank go around northward, basically, to defend more properties or threaten more properties. You don't really want to have your tank just skulking along down here where it's out of the way and can't really help with things. And so the upshot is you tend not to have it very close to this port, making this port somewhat vulnerable. It's one of the more contestable properties on the map, and also one of the ones that's best to take early, because if you don't take it early, late game they can defend to guard it with like a black boat, and then it's really hard to take it at all. So, that kind of thing I'm thinking about. Also, this is a cheap way to ward off an early recon harassed by him if he was crazy enough to try that. Yeah, I don't need to have a tank for that because I am Von Bolt. I can just trash him if my recon attacks him when he's coming into my turf. So it's a cheap way to do that without having to actually build a full quality tank there. So you can see, he is a bit delayed by that one capture mistake, but it'll be okay. And he could have built a recon this turn, but he was smart not to do so, I think, because as player 1, he's already kind of short one infantry going to the side because he had to have it walk over there and capture the base first and whatnot, right? But also, building this artillery meant that he only has 2 infantry going that direction currently. If he had a recon now, he'd have 1 fewer infantry going that direction, so he'd be really, really slow capturing all of these things. That would hurt his economy way too much, so it is smart to delay that, I think. He will need vision for that artillery eventually, but delaying it will allow him to get there in time. Good choice. Or we can go south to get my T-copter out, and a pack of infantry, of course. So he initiates his captures as expected. And down on the south, he's going to skip 1 property, which is pretty common on this map. People tend to either skip that city or that city, depending on their capture order, and rush for the next one in the chain, essentially, so it can't get harassed as easily. It makes some sense, and it tends to work well with infantry timing too, although for him, with no infantry coming along behind him, it's going to be costing him a fair amount of money. A lot of his choices are things that cost him money. That one little mistake over here with the infantry moving to that position costs him about 1,000. Having few infantry go this way costs him a fair amount of money. Skipping that property costs him a fair amount of money. So he now is going to be a little bit vulnerable near the game to me, because he's going to be a little bit behind to be able to build many vehicles. He gets his Seacopter and his Recon, of course, to now build a scout for that artillery, and he'll be able to get these properties as well. So my Recon moves over here where I can watch the comp tower, and more importantly, this is the best approach to get down to these forests and start watching that port. So that's why I do that. Get a whole bunch of properties this turn. You can see I'm pretty well ahead of him on income already, just by having had a somewhat more efficient capture order. Now, speaking of the T-copters and whatnot, a lot of people on this map, even really good players who should know better, use their T-copters terribly here for some reason. I've seen so many players take their T-copter and just walk it over here on this turn, doing literally nothing, completely wasting its turn. That does not get you to this island any faster. If I put it over here, I can give the infantry a boost, and still get to that property at the same speed next turn. Or likewise go down there and boost that guy. Those moves are good moves. Having it go here is a complete waste of its time. So don't do that. And there I get a tank because I do want to make this my strongest side, ultimately. So I could have put it over that direction, but I wanted it to be here instead. And if that recon does spot a vehicle, like a recon down there, I want to have a second one to come down and chase it off and deal with it. A recon on its own can maybe ward off an early recon, but it can't do anything against a tank that it might send that way. So I'm going to get vision of what his vehicle is, and then be able to hunt it down and destroy it. Now, I knew Banjoy would be smart with his T-copter. He's always good with his T-copters whenever he builds them, so I knew he would not make that kind of mistake that people have done of just wasting its turn. He's advancing to the forest. He gets that boost. Good job. You can see that, despite our very different capture orders, we're going to be arriving at the comm tower at basically the same turn. He'll start at his turn 9, he'll start at my turn 9. So, like I said, everyone always captures the comm tower without exception on turn 9. He's got a somewhat late tank to defend himself here, but even this super slow tank, if I had a recon coming this way, he would still be in time to defend himself. So, it is really not a good idea to try to do recon harassment early on this map. Except, potentially going for this port. Because you don't need to build a recon early to do that. Turn 5 is fast enough to get there in time. Alright, so I skip that part, but I have this guy coming along behind, and that guy and so forth, so this is going to be more money overall. Go over to that port, and I thought I could go into this forest or that forest, but this one is more likely to be empty. You could have a recon in that forest somewhat plausibly, so this is more likely to be a safe place to hang out. and I'm getting a B-copter here. Now, as I said, a B-copter is very, very efficient for reinforcing either side quite well. So if I run into trouble over there, like unexpected harassment, I can just get this copter over there in 2 turns, and it's great. Or if I need more firepower down here, I can do that too. Copters are super versatile on this map. I also had an idea. I didn't think it would work against him. It would work against most opponents, but not a person like him who's good with his T-copters and gets them early and so forth. We'll talk about that as we get into things, but essentially it had one creative idea that I don't think I've ever seen anybody else do on this map. And a copter could help with that. He runs up and scouts, gets his captures, of course. He is quite delayed getting to the middle and getting over to here, but he's making up for that by being really fast getting to this side of the map. You can see I'm not even close to getting to these cities over here. But I am ahead on money overall, because I got the middle, or I'm going to get the middle things faster and getting these things faster than he's getting this equivalent. Gets his own copter, because, and this is very important, he got ambushed over here. Now, even if he hadn't been ambushed, I would have seen him go into this forest, and I would have been able to hunt him down safely next turn, have this guy revealed, and have the recon shoot it. So he's in trouble, because I just had a recon watching that forest. This aggressive play did not pay off for him. But the worst thing that could happen is getting ambushed. So now I can shoot him out in the open without needing to even slow down that comm tower capture. So he's in some big trouble now. We need to reinforce over there fast. So getting a B-copter and skipping that base, I think, was the right thing to do. So that was very interesting to me. It's not only does this give me a great chance to open up and fire on his artillery, but also seeing that and seeing this recon means he did not get an early T-copter. I had assumed that he would get one because he usually gets them on maps where they're good. But I know he must have delayed that T-copter by several turns, and that's intriguing. See, something I noticed was, people seem to assume these islands will always be the property of the red player, and never even try to contest them. But the thing is, from the time a T-copter is built, your next move with it is usually putting like over here or there if you know what you're doing, basically. Or here if you don't know what you're doing. Okay, so you build it, next turn you go there, next turn there, that's 2 turns so far since after it was built, then 3, 4, 5 turns after it was built, you're going for that property over there. 7 turns after it was built, you're going for this property here. The thing is, an early B-copter only takes 4 turns to get from this airport to standing on that city. What that means is if you build the B-copter pretty early, you can actually get it to fly in there in time before a T-copter will even show up. Then they'll show up and get ambushed and you can shoot them down for free. They can't even unload. So they lose 6,000 money and they lose these 2 properties for like 5 more turns. It is devastating and well worth the risk. Even if you think they'll get a pretty early T-copter, you at least deny this property, and that's still pretty devastating. Now, against the point that there's an early T-copter, you cannot arrive in time. But against someone who delayed it, now we're talking. Now he's revealed that he's delayed it. That gives me a fighting chance to capture one of those properties from him. I don't think I've ever seen anybody else do that, but it can be very efficient. Banjo, as I said, is a creative player. He actually did something similar on one of his games in this map. He got an early T-copter and didn't go take it over to his islands, he took it over to the opponent's islands, which is also quite smart. I knew that wouldn't work against him because I'd seen him do that, so didn't try it. But I thought a B-copter intercept, now that could work. That could stop his T-copter. So I'm feeling pretty good at this point. I'm getting lots and lots of captures. You know, I'm Von Bolt, so I know if he attacks me, I'll still win those fights. I've got tank coverage here, so if he attacks my recon with a recon over there, he can't really kill me, and I'll just smash him. Cripple his artillery. Things are good. And now I've got a fighting chance to take over these islands too and really solidify my loot. So off goes the T-copter to the west, and I need to have vision to scout for it. I need to have a recon over here so I can reveal the islands and see that they're actually empty, and be ready to hunt down this T-copter and destroy it, so recon over that direction will arrive in time. And a tank to back me up down here so I can just fight hard for this front while I try to have that copter just sneak on through and harass him over there and interrupt those islands. Alright, so he has to pull back, not great for him. Gets those captures, and as I said, he's quite aggressive and quite fast getting over to these properties here. Faster than I thought he would be. But he is paying for it with being slow getting to the middle and getting over here. So this turn he gets himself a tank to fight over here, which I think is a good thing. He knows they have a recon there, probably have other vehicles going there too. He needs something to fight that off at least. He needs to stabilize his bad situation over in this front. As his infantry arrive and they're kind of easy prey right now, he doesn't want that, so a tank there is a good idea. I'm not as certain about getting a recon over there. Might have been better to save money, but you know, it's an okay choice at the very least. He could use some vision there too. So, you know, I think these are solid, respectable choices at the very least. So, I get a ton of properties this turn. Because I'm Von Bolt, I can guarantee to kill him off of cities, which is phenomenal. Like, that one interaction, that Von Bolt can beat Hawk infantry's off of cities, and Hawk can't do the same thing, that one thing makes Von Bolt usually the best pick in Tier 1, even though his powers are garbage compared to Hawk, and his day-to-day is not superficially that much better. It is just so important that they claim cities like this, and that the opponent can't do the same in retaliation. So I get a ton of properties, know I'm well ahead of him on money at this point for sure, but I am going to get a little bit greedy over here. See, I thought, well, he pushed infantry ahead over here. That means he gave up something, he skipped a property or something like that. Either, here, he pushed right past one, or he was super late getting to the middle or something like that. He probably didn't do that for both of these properties, I thought, so this one might well be open, so that I can try to go grab it. But I kind of misread the situation. He had, in fact, grabbed both of them, so I'm going to walk over and then get ambushed. I should have just captured that port and done the safe move instead. So there we go. My biggest blunder of the early game so far, I would say. I made a couple of mistakes this turn, in fact. Partly because we actually played this pretty much live in a single afternoon for almost all of the turns, which was actually a big mistake in its own right on my part, because Banjoy plays a lot of live League, he's really good at that kind of thing, whereas I'm a much more methodical, slow player, so I should not have been playing things his way super fast. I should have taken more time to think about things and not made any of these little minor but important mistakes. My tank is over here because I want to try to watch those two properties and be ready to interrupt them. I'm happy to see he doesn't have them yet. And I also want to be ready to try to flank his artillery. If he leaves that, force unguarded, I might be able to slip behind it and destroy it that way if he thinks the front is safe or something like that. So, I'm just trying to keep my options open for how to hunt down that artillery and destroy it, ultimately. Now, I would characterize my T-cover uses up until this point as pretty much perfect. I got maximum boost out of it, did really, really well, but now I'm going to make a mistake that kind of throws with some of that progress. See, my plan was this infantry walks over to here. Next turn I can walk into that T-copter and get to the island and it's perfect. But, I was playing it live, forgot about that, and moved into the wrong square. There we go, so now he can't get onto the T-copter, so that screwed up my, up until this point, perfect T-copter uses. I was quite annoyed about that. I realized the mistake immediately, but it was too late. So B-copter, because I probably want to get something that can cover me down here, basically. I don't have anything that can fight copters, and need to have something that can do that, and this guy will arrive much faster than an anti-air could. And if it comes to it, I could also have the option at least to have it go westward, and maybe do a dogfight if he has a copter show up over there. That way they'll make it more likely this guy can slip on through to that city and block it. Having options is a good thing here. Alright, so get some properties, starts capturing these ones, but again, that's super late. Like, I've already got the equivalents. So, and I can see him capturing this thing, which is also not good for him. A price to be paid for Wynn's capture order. And here, because he's not Von Bolt, he can interrupt this, but at a terrible price. Those two infantry are going to both die. They're quite exposed now, and I'll still be able to try to keep capturing that city next turn. So, if you're playing Hawk against Von Bolt, I don't think you should do this, really. Going to lose infantry for not much gain. Maybe he thinks that because I'm strong over here, I must be weak over there, but that's not necessarily true on this map. On this map, it tends to have vehicles on both sides, like he does. So I don't think I agree with that move. And I do agree with his build orders, for sure. Copter's tanks are a great thing to produce lots of on this map, so that makes perfect sense. And this base is versatile, I can either go north or east as he finds that he needs to. So on this turn 11, I make some pretty big moves. For one thing, I'm going over the island property here, that's as expected. Over here, though, I think, he's exposed to infantry there, I better clean those guys up. But I shouldn't get too aggressive over here, because I don't really have much vehicle backup. So kill his infantry, but try to keep some of mine safe at the very least. I scout that force to see if it's empty. It's not empty. That's not surprising, but it's worth checking with the 1 HP guy. I wish I was capturing that port, but I'm not, so I'll finish that guy off instead. And maintain that capture so I can hopefully keep luring more of his guys over here to fight me. I could have attacked his tank with my copter, but my thinking was that I would do less than half of his HP to him because he's on good terrain. And the other thing is, that copter is within easy reinforcement reach of that airport. There's a good chance of there being a copter like right here waiting to attack me. That would be a terrible trade for me. It's better if I can lure him off of that property. Lure him out to attack this guy or that guy or something like that, and then slam him when he's out in the open when I can maybe wall for my copter, and at the very least he doesn't have good terrain anymore and is further from his airport. So, that is my thinking at this point, why I'm going to hold back. Plus, the real purpose of this copter is not to take out half a tank, but to slip over here and deny one or both of those cities, which is worth a lot more for the long term. On the other hand, I'm going to be aggressive down here. Because now I know there's a tank over here. So that means there's not a tank over here, or at least there's one fewer tank over here. The fact that I saw an artillery and a recon early on, and know that he must have a T-copter or just economic suicide, means he mustn't have committed that many forces down to this front. So if I attack all out down here, he might have like a copter covering himself. He has a recon, I know. But he can't have much more than that. So if I attack all out down here, I might lose half a recon and half a tank, but I can wipe out his artillery and these captures and start capturing one of them myself, and that is going to be easily worth it economically. So, scout there, you reveal the artillery and also stop up that guy so I can interrupt the capture fully. Interrupt that one fully, start the capture over there. I can see his B-copter over there, and he knows I can see it. So I'm hoping now, if I attack over here with the tank, he might take a bluff, basically. He might think that I have anti-air or battlecopter coverage and not attack. He'll probably attack. But there's a chance, at least, he'll think that I have coverage because I'm going to so confidently attack him. In truth, I just don't care if I lose half a tank. It's well worth it to take out half my artillery and deny all these properties, so that's why I'm going to do it. Over there, just to keep my guys alive, get some repairs done so I can hold the line here a little bit longer. And again, I don't attack the tank over there. I don't think it's really worth the risk. I need to get over here instead and just interrupt those captures. There I build a lander. That was my kind of second secret sauce here. Nobody ever seems to build a lander on this map. Just like nobody ever tries to deny these island properties. But I think both actually are quite powerful if you think outside the box a bit. Now, building a lander is a real cost. That's a tank and a half down the drain, essentially, in funds. But over the course of a typical match on this map, because there's so much funding, because it tends to go for so long, it is commonplace to have spent 300,000 apiece, basically, on units. Out of 300,000, 12,000 is a kind of a drop in the bucket, and it will massively accelerate like 200,000 worth of those units to the front line so much faster, which will easily pay for itself, as it were. Sure, there's one turn where you're behind like a tank and a half, but then there'll be turns after that where you're ahead like a tank at a time by just transporting them so much faster to the front lines. For the long term, it'll pay off pretty well. I want to have a way to win the long term so that when he gets his blast from out, I'm not totally helpless. I can claw my way back if I'm not as far ahead at that point as I would like to be. My thinking is, I can get this infantry back into the action, I guess. That's not really important. Some people have seen try to actually have the T-copter just sit around here and do nothing until the infantry finishes capturing and then carry it down here. Horrible idea. Leave the infantry to rot. He is not worth laying these two properties for like 3 turns apiece. But anyway, I can get the infantry into the action, which would be a minor advantage of building this lander. But more importantly, a lander here can go 2, 4, 6 onto that port, carrying people from these 2 bases. That means this base ends up almost an entire turn ahead. Normally you have a tank here go and end up like there in that forest. Well, with a lander, you have it end up over here. As I said, almost an entire turn's of movement ahead. Furthermore, let's get this base down to fight on this front. It is the biggest concentration of forces you can possibly get on this map. You can have all 3 bases now going to the south front totally efficiently, all in tandem together, and just overrun whatever the opponent has there. With landers short reinforcement times, you can threaten these properties over here that are normally probably too close to the enemy to ever really get. So that's a pretty great thing to be thinking about, too. Even if we're getting over to here, it's not really awful. Like, you can get a vehicle from this base, normally can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, but with a lander, you can get it dropped off over to there instead. Decent amount ahead. And I might add, this is for the worst case scenario for the lander. This is for tanks, basically. For infantry or slow vehicles like MD tanks and artillery, it's actually way faster with the lander. So there are serious long-term benefits to building a lander in this map. It's well worth considering, I think, for the long game. Again, you do need to be aware that you'll be weak for a few turns, but you'll pay for yourself with stronger turns after that. Alright, so he gets some properties. He keeps fighting with infantry brawl up there. Does take the bait and go off the comm tower, so that's good for me. And he was doing okay in infantry fights, but he's moved off of the good terrain and out where I have reinforcements ready to mow him down, so that's really not good for him, I would say, overall. He's hitting the islands, same timing I am, pretty much. Not too surprising. He does call my bluff there, so good job for him. I lose what I expected to lose. Half a tank, half a recon. Well worth it. For half an artillery plus denying these properties and taking that one for myself. He's got coverage coming, but I can see that coming, so that's good for me. And he shifts everybody over to there, which makes sense, But it does mean, again, because they're going that way rather than this way, he's going to be quite short on people to defend himself over there. He won't have much to wall with. He might have the numbers to win an infantry brawl over here. My reinforcements are kind of not really going that direction. But, he doesn't really have many vehicles backing stuff up there. If I have something attack this tank, he's kind of out of luck, basically. Now, he could cover that, but crucially, he doesn't. He goes over here. And this really is what I want. You know, my biggest fear on this map is that he would focus entirely on his top side, and I wouldn't really be able to beat him there with me having spent a lander to get people down here faster or things like that. So it might be kind of a stalemate where I get some progress over here before we run into these super fast reinforcement routes, he gets some progress over there, and then he can just blast storm me to death. But if I can lure him into fighting a lot down here, where I'm going to be super strong with my lander backing me up, that's what I want. So I'm glad that that worked. I was able to bait him into fighting on this side. I agree with his builds there. Coppers and tanks are a great build choice, so no complaints there. Smart choice. Alright, so ready to grab person for the next island property. I get that one that should rightfully be his. I can move in for the port too. He can see me do it, but he can't interrupt it because I'm out of range. If he wants to have his recon and copter come down here to interrupt me, they both have to do it together, and then I can counter them and crush them with a tank and a copter. So I'm going to get that port too. If they were to do a join up, I think that I can probably get away with that at this point. You know, he's pretty softened up. You can't have that many more guys coming. I'm going to kill off his infantry that are out here, so I'll get that property and it'll be well worth it in the long term to just have that money, I think. So kill off a ton of infantry, try to keep my guys alive, and I do go ahead and attack that tank at this point. I wasn't certain that force is empty. I was pretty sure it was, I thought, worth being further from that island to be able to not possibly get ambushed in that forest. So let's take the wind out of his sails over there. He lost all his infantry for almost nothing. He lost his tank. He doesn't have any backups, so he is done pushing on that side. My infantry's getting into the action with that lander. And here I think, well, I can't really push into this yet. My reinforcements are still coming, but I don't need to push into this yet, you know. I don't need to keep pushing endlessly. I am the aggressive CO, but it doesn't mean I have to take every attack all the time. I just need to think about where can I push, where can I pick up some properties compared to him. I know I'm ahead of him on money. Not as much as I would like to, but I am ahead of him on money. And I'm going to get even more ahead of my money. When I capture this port, he doesn't get this port. When I get these two things, when I maybe deny him that island. So I'm doing okay here. I said think about where can I win some battles, and try to win those to get even more of an advantage. So, he saw my copter go down there. It's worth it to have this coverage, I think, so now he can't get to that port. And likewise, he can't reveal me over here very well. If I have two vehicles, you know, one walk to the port, one attack me, not worth the sacrifice of having me just pummel him with the battlecopter afterward. My tank, he can see me going for repairs. If he dares to interrupt, he gets hammered by a copter and a tank, so he's not going to interrupt me, so I get those repairs pretty much safely. And I'll just be building up for next time. And this anti-air here can be picked up onto the lander and dropped up either this way, very fast, or this way, quite fast. I don't know where I really need it more. You know, if a copter comes out of the woodwork and attacks me over here, I need to maybe have a copter and an anti-air go that direction. But if that doesn't happen, then down here is probably the best bet. Just keep pushing here where I want to be strong, where I know he has a copter over there. So I have my options open because of that lander. So there he does scout me, but he doesn't actually follow through and attack the recon, probably realizing that it's not worth losing the copter over. But the downside is now the recon is exposed. So he shifts back, he goes for that capture again. Pulls back there, which makes sense, because he lost his only good vehicle, so he can't really fight on that side anymore. And, yeah, this makes sense. That recon's going to die, he needs to replace it, so, yeah. Good build, you know, another cop, another tank, and a recon to replace the one that's going to die. Makes sense to me. And here I think he kind of realizes a little bit too late that copter should have been over in that side, so it's shifting that direction. Yeah. I agree with that. He knows I have coppers there. He needs more defenses, so he doesn't get overrun too badly. But my goal is not to have this copter hammer him over there. That would be too risky. Too much of a chance of just being hit by a reinforcement copter. My goal, which he doesn't know about, is to go over to the island, which nobody ever does. So, get lots of properties and know I'm well ahead of my money. Scout the island, I'm happy to see he does not have it, so that's great for me. So I'm going to get both of them, and he is possibly not going to get that one now. Keep an eye on the comm tower. I don't feel like pushing into this. He probably has more vehicles and more infantry over there. I know I don't have that much myself, so I don't push my luck. I just set up to capture either this port most likely, or maybe that's it if I see an opportunity. If he pulls way back, I might go for that, but probably not. And shift over there to where I'm out of sight, where I can then just cruise on to the city next turn. And if he has a T-Copter fly up this turn, it's okay. I can attack it no matter what side he puts it on, no matter what side he drops the infantry on. I can do whatever I would need to. So there, I now have reinforcements ready to do another attack and deny that property, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Soften him up. You know, I can't possibly get that capture, but shoot his infantry, that's still a net advantage to me. And I'll kill off that recon and make another wall and keep my vehicles alive while I just keep pushing forward here, as the reinforcements slowly begin to trickle in. And for me, another copter, tank, double infantry. Saving a bit of money. It makes sense, I think, generally speaking, on terms of your landers going elsewhere to build an air unit, and to save a little bit of money. Not too much, but a little bit of money. So when your lander goes back, you have money to build multiple big things, have to go onto it at the same time, and then drop off super fast. You can get more overall power to the front lines faster that way. Within reason. You don't want to, delay reinforcements too much. So here he pushes back ahead. I guess his reinforcements are arriving, so he feels more confident. That makes some sense. I don't know that's happening, but I see that guy pop out, so I know he's pushing a little bit, at least. But also know where his T-copter is now, so that's great for me. Here makes a smart play, goes onto that city with a tank. It'll be harder for him to push him off of that. True, I can 2-hit kill him with, tank, or copter tank or whatever. But he's got reinforcements backing himself up there. So I shouldn't do that carelessly anyway. He once again shifts his copters back. I will say, he's had to shift a lot back and forth with those copters. That is costing him. Every turn in that middle there, you're doing nothing. Front shifting this map, as I mentioned, is kind of painful. It's very slow. So that he keeps having to shift is helping me and hurting him, I would say. Again, another classic build. Tank, copter, infantry. It's a great choice in this map. Okay, ready to pick up that infantry from that island. Here, make a bit of a mistake. See, I thought, because I'd seen him pull back, that he probably still wasn't in that forest, but of course he'd reoccupied it. I should maybe have realized that he was reoccupying it by how he moved his infantry back up, so a bit too aggressive there. Should have been content to just block that city for the time being. But here I think, okay, I planned to originally block his T-copter with that copter. I can just shoot it down though, and that's pretty much as good or better. I'm going to go ahead and do that. So, go ahead, drive up and shoot him. I know he has a copter there. He again might be fooled by a bluff, but probably not. But the important thing is, even if he attacks me there, I'm still coming out way ahead on funds. We'll do some scratch damage to his copter, killed an entire T-copter, and denied him this profit for who knows how many turns. Maybe forever. So that is fantastic for me. Well worth losing a copter over that. And I'll shift in some reinforcements and it'll be okay. Here, I'm still not really getting greedy. I know he has reinforcements waiting behind there. I know he has at least one copter unaccounted for, so I just wall up a bit. Again, nothing I can fight for right now. I can't really capture this property right now. I don't have a guy in position for it. I can't really deny him a capture because he's not working on it right now. So, no reason to push, and therefore I don't push it. I just build it where I can push next turn. I want to interrupt captures and do captures of my own. When I can't do one of those two things, there's not too much reason to be fighting. I should just focus on creating threats for next turn instead, rather than throwing away resources that I have right now. And I'm thinking, this copter's going to die. Need to have another anti-air over there probably, and more coppers going that direction too. And this artillery will be a great way to consolidate my gains over here. I'm thinking now it's quite plausible I can take this property, maybe this one. That'd be pretty crazy, but it could happen if he just doesn't have people in position on the crucial turn. But once I get that, I probably shouldn't really try to push any further. That's too close to reinforcement lines, even with a lander really. I should probably instead at that point shift over here where the gains will be a little bit easier, and where I can get kind of more income for my investment. So the plan is to have the artillery come down here, go into maybe that forest or that forest, something like that, lock down properties, hold on to them, and then shift over to here and focus on reinforcements there next. So a few more turns of fighting down here, then lock it down and fight over here for gains there instead. So he scouts again, doesn't see any vehicles, does go ahead, calls my bluff again. Well done, not fooled. He gets a nice attack there, it's painful, but it's not unexpected. And it does again mean, whatever vehicles he has over here, he does not have over here, so now I'm more confident in attacking him on this front, I would say. He gets a kill there, threatens a capture, but that's not going to happen. And that's kind of what I was hoping. This player does not have any weaknesses that I've observed. But one weakness he does have is he tends to attack on all fronts simultaneously. Now, that's not always a bad move. If you know that you are strong and your opponent is weak, and you can win on all fronts simultaneously, do it, of course. But here, he's playing a weak seal against a strong seal. He's behind on the economy and he knows it. He's behind on vehicles and he knows it. this is not the time to be super aggressive everywhere. If he's having an easy time winning over here, it must mean have lots of guys ready to go down here. So, not a great time to be pushing forward too far, I would say. Again, remember, he is Hawk. He can win the long game. He just needs to not lose too hard right now. He's losing pretty hard so far, but he needs to, if he can just stabilize, it's enough for him to eventually win. He doesn't need to take many big risks. Tick over here is obligatory to replace the one that just died, so that makes sense. And then it can't afford too much else, so I agree with these builds. They're smart builds. So I know I get even more properties here. I'm way ahead in income. And I'm going to stay that way. So here I scout him and also think I can set up for a 2-hit kill there, so that's great. And I see 3 copters. That's a lot of copters. But I've got an anti-air, but 2 copters of my own. It's not too bad. I'm thinking about something else too, a big choice to make, which is if I attack him all out right now, he'll probably get a superpower next turn, which will hurt me a lot. I'll be badly exposed and I get a superpower. I will lose a lot of value. But that might actually be worth it. Because Blackstorm scales up infinitely. If I delay it, it will still be super strong next turn with a turn after that, with a turn after that. Whereas, on the other hand, Ex Machina is trash if the opponent has time to prepare. It is trivial to, have a bait unit make that power totally worthless. Unless you're just forced to rush to an all-out attack right away at one point and don't have time to build up something expensive back into your base. So if I force him to attack all out now in one place, I can get good Ex Machina on him and break his momentum and then hunt down his units with my reinforcements. And make his Blackstorm be less powerful than it otherwise could be. So I decide I'm going to go for it. I'm going to attack him everywhere at once, give him a superpower, have him hit me with it while it's comparatively weak, and force him to attack with a lot of units in one place with an Ex Machina. It's my best chance, I think, to make his superpower be less devastating. It is going to hurt a lot, but I can make it less so. So take that attack, I'm going to lose that coffer, but I'm going to do a lot of damage to him. It's probably worth it overall. Soften that guy up. Threaten that capture there. I don't think I'll get away with it, but I can make him have one more thing with limited numbers of vehicles. Likewise over there, just wreck his tanks, wall for anti-air. Now, he knows I have an anti-air. He's got multiple coppers there. He's going to want to kill that thing. But I know how to commit many vehicles to kill it. How to kill that recon, kill that tank with 2 guys, maybe 1 guy because he can do Blackstorm, attack the anti-air itself with 1 guy, help this thing attack that copter. So he's going to have a lot of guys in this position, so thinking ahead, and basically, he will be forced to get Ex Machina if he attacks over here, is my thinking. Don't expect to get this capture, just kind of more to give him too many things to respond to at once. He can't do everything simultaneously with limited numbers of vehicles. Or at the very least, he can't hold back while he does so. He'll be forced to concentrate them in one area and not get too tricky. Put people in the cities to get their repairs so they'll be at full capturing potential as much as possible. I thought about keeping these guys on the lander and not dropping them off, just so they don't take any damage. But I decided that wasn't really worth it. It was more important to get them to the front lines faster, even if they are at 8 HP, so I'll do that. They can maybe pit stop at cities on the way, we'll see. I also thought about saving some money here. I wasn't sure how much, but decided to save a little bit, so I don't waste it on repair costs, and so when my lander goes back, I can then load up something big next turn. And, start turning things around faster after the devastating Black Storm turn that I know is coming. So how do things stand right now? My game plan had to be to basically be winning before Blackstorm comes out, so that Blackstorm puts him back maybe at a tidy position rather than putting him ahead. And I've done that. I'm ahead by 15 units, by 6,000 and growing money, and by 60,000 value. This is about the best you can hope for, I think, as Von Bull against Hawk. I've done my game plan pretty much as I hoped I would. It's working really, really well. Blackstorm will still hurt a lot, but it's a good outcome overall. So first he needs to get it, of course. He's a little tiny bit short. So that's a good move, He doesn't really need to have the copter have any stronger attack than that to do well in that engagement, if that makes sense. Good way to get some build-up. I don't agree with this move, though. That will guarantee to not give him enough power. It's probably smarter to wait till he has Blackstorm and then do that attack, so he can then actually guarantee to kill that thing. Minor thing. I see a lot of people do this kind of thing, though, where, they're close to their CO power, and so they have a lot of infantry engagements to get just barely to their CO power threshold. But infantry barely costs something, so that really takes a lot of fighting, and you don't really get much power gauge for it. And the other thing is, infantry benefit just as much as vehicles do from 10% generic attack and defense bonuses, basically. So I think it's often a better idea, not always, but often, to look for a vehicle fight you can do to get charge up instead, and then have your infantry all be fully powered out for all their minor attacks, and kill the enemy infantry more easily that way. I think that's often a better deal. But here comes Blackstorm. So, take a lot of items, he gets a lot of HP back. You know, tried to kill a lot of his units, but I couldn't kill them all. Kind of like fighting Mini Andy, so he gets a lot of healing, and I take a ton of damage. So down goes that copter. He's going to break through there, going to hit my anti-air really hard, so the anti-air is crippled. These copters have seemingly free reign. Great turn for him. Kills all things there, but I had reinforcements ready, so it's all kind of as I planned. Thought I'd be baiting a battle copter over there, and I am, so that's great for me. And he still can't capture anything, so he's still going to be way behind on income. I don't know if he needs another recon, honestly. I think he's got enough of those. He needs it from the top side, but he spent a lot of money on recon so far, and they are kind of a drain on your economy after a while when you're already a weaker CO. So I'm not sure about that one. But what I am sure about is my plan worked perfectly down here. Yeah, I got pummeled, but all those guys are in one spot, ready for an Ex Machina. So here it comes. Just as I hoped it would. So, copter momentum just dies instantly. I kind of bring this anti-air in and smash them. This copter has free reign to smash them. I can maybe even capture the city now because it can't drop me properly anymore. Let me actually go back to show. So, you know, he went from being behind 60,000 to ahead 30,000. That was a powerful Blackstorm. Blackstorm is a super good power. But, anyway, Ex Machina comes in, kill that copter off. You know, destroy his capture so they can't actually take any properties from me. You know, that guy is stunned, he can't really do anything. So that side is blocked, this side is now blocked. Join that up. He can attack me from this side if he has a vehicle over there. Otherwise, he has to break through over there. I've artillery pointed that thing. This guy's blocked anyway. I am going to get that city at this point. It's almost guaranteed. Here, I can't retake that property, so I just pull back. You know, that's fine. Get some repairs, threaten captures next turns. It'll be okay. And here, you know, I do need to pull some guys back and get some repairs. I'm not strong enough to fight into him over that side. You know, took a pummeling there, as I expected it would. This is my stronger side right now, this is my weaker side. So, I shift back to kill his capturers rather than to actually be pushing ahead right now. Get a Neotank so I can drop it up super fast, and there we go. So, I went from, you know, ahead 60,000 to behind like 30,000 to being back ahead 30,000. So, on turn after his superpower, I am ahead again. That means I'm going to win, basically. I'm now ahead by 10 units after his strongest turn he's ever going to get. I'm ahead a bunch of, you know, income. My income lead is even growing, so he's in some deep trouble at this point. He gets some good fights, but I've got reinforcements coming. It doesn't really matter. I can block that with a black boat and I threaten that capture too. Can't interrupt that capture either. So I wasn't too surprised when he resigned this turn. It was, as I said, one of my closest games, one of my toughest games. He was definitely a very strong opponent, played quite well. I was very glad I could do my creative strategies here of playing Von Bolt on this pretty much Hawk-only map, and do some island properties now that people never seem to think of, and also do my lander and have that be working pretty well, I thought, overall. So, glad I could play unconventionally on this old classic map. And had a really tough time against this very formidable, very worthy opponent. I really enjoyed that a lot. Let's have a look at the stats. I guess to make it more accurate, it would make more sense to go back to the previous turn, actually. So you can see I generated a ton more money than he did, because of that better capture order, and just doing a good job of denying him properties in the early game by just being aggressive with my Von Bolt guys. So that helped me a fair amount there, for sure. Damage taken wise took just as much as he did, basically, because of Blackstorm being counted for that, so just massive damage taken there. But in terms of kills, I definitely had the advantage there, for sure. We built, I think, similar things overall, you know. We each built, you know, 6 copters. We each built, you know, some similar things. He actually had no anti-air the whole time, so that was surprising to me, because they're really, you know, kind of necessary in this map, I would say. Especially given that fighters tend to see a lot of use. I guess he built 2 in the very final turn, you know, maybe anticipating bombers or whatever, but no anti-airs for most of the game, so the copters had freer reign than they would have had otherwise, I would say. But anyway, a great game against a great opponent. And with that win, I'm actually in the top 100 Fog players now. That's nice. Thank you for watching, everyone, and a special thank you to my Patreon supporters: Illusory Thunder, Master Knight DH, Jackie, Advanced Warrior, Gregory, Will Mayfield, Kenny Boggs, Danny Hall, Jeffrey Morse, Supreme Crimson Leader, and Enlino. Have a great day, everyone.